This podcast is sponsored by A. Miller George Funeral Home, where each life is celebrated, and their sister company, Cremation London and Middlesex, both family-owned and operated. By Hyde Park Care Pharmacy. Experience the difference an independent pharmacy can make for you and your loved ones. Hyde Park Care Pharmacy offers personalized care, short wait time, very competitive pricing, easy transfer of your prescription, and much more. And by Molly Maid. During these times of COVID-19, it has never been more important to keep your family safe. With the Healthy Home Cleaning System, Molly Maid London is here to help. Make your home a healthy haven. Call Molly Maid London today.
And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever and wherever you may be. We welcome you back to another edition of the Vickers Crossing podcast. Vickers Crossing is a virtual space where faith intersects with the public square. And my name is Rob Henderson, and I'm enjoying a delicious, freshly brewed Muskoka coffee today in my Vickers Crossing mug, which you can find out how you can own one of these, by the way, on our website.
That's right.
And I am also the priest at Holy Trinity St. Stephen's Church in London.
Kevin George here. I'm the rector at St. Aidan's Church. I've got a different Vickers Crossing mug. You can get one of those too.
Travel.
You can get the travel mug if you like. And I've got a Tim Hortons coffee, not as good as my Muskoka brew. When I hear the word Muskoka brew, I think beer. But anyway, my name is Kevin George. I'm the priest at St. Aidan's Church, and we are enjoying our coffee today. And we're glad you're here with us. I'm up in the northwest corner of London, Ontario, and I'm joined here by a good buddy of mine too, another guy.
My name is Ian. I am a singer-songwriter, and the closest thing that I have to me is an empty water bottle that I finished drinking just before I got on here. So,
do we not have water bottles with our logo on them? So he has got something.
we should get on that.
I'll get my crayons out, and I'll make it.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Hey, guys, glad that we could get back together again. We got a great guest today on the Vickers Crossing. Really looking forward to chatting today with a brilliant journalist and groundbreaking host of Canada Tonight on CBC. Ginella Massa is joining us today, and she's going to be coming into the Zoom room here in just a minute.
Fantastic. She's got a great show going right now. Lots to look forward to in a conversation there.
Yeah, she's just 2 or 3 weeks into the new season here, and
3 weeks.
Really looking forward to hearing what she has to say and talking about her journey and what's going on with that.
Well, and a great guest to have on the first podcast we have for February, which is of course Black History Month. More on that in a minute. But right now we want to acknowledge the land upon which we record this podcast. This Vickers Crossing acknowledges that this podcast is recorded on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Lenapehoik peoples and the Attawandaron peoples on lands connected with the London Township and Sombre Treaties 1796 and the Dish with One Spoon Covenant Wampum. This land continues to be a home to diverse Indigenous peoples, and we recognize those peoples as contemporary stewards of this land and vital contributors to our society. We work to live in harmony.
Very good. And also I want to say hello and always a big thank you to our sponsors here at the Vickers Crossing, to A. Miller George Funeral Home, where each life is celebrated, and their sister company, Cremation London Middlesex, both family owned and operated. And a shout out again to Dave Mullen and the staff at A. Miller George Funeral Home today. Now,
this is the place where I usually make a joke about Dave, but I'm not going to make a joke about Dave today, because yesterday we had a celebration here for one of our most faithful listeners, Vicki Anderson, who loved this podcast and everything about it. And she was deeply loved here in this parish. And her funeral was yesterday, and Dave looked after that. And you get to see just how important the work that Dave Mullen and the people at A. Miller George, the work that they're doing is a ministry. And it's so critically important, especially at such a sensitive time. So let me say, in addition to your plug, that Dave, we're very thankful for you as our Vicky's family, for everything you did yesterday. And God bless you for what you're doing, especially during these times of pandemic. Can't be easy. With that said, I also want to advocate getting some drugs. So get off to Hyde Park Care Pharmacy and pick yourself up some medication. Help yourself with whatever you're feeling. And Carol Basada, who's there, it's a privately owned, locally operated, locally loved place. You need to go to Hyde Park Care Pharmacy.
And last, but 100% certainly not least out of the three here, we want to say a big thank you to Molly Maid. Make your home a healthy haven. Call Molly Maid London today. We want to say many thanks to Trisha Lister for that one. Big hello and thank you to them over there.
Better make that call today.
We love our sponsors. We love that you will support us, and we appreciate you being a big part of the Vickers Crossing family here. And guys, hope everything's good with you. Hope you're feeling okay and well, even though we're still kind of stuck inside. Ian actually left the house, I understand, to get to school, right?
Yeah, it was crazy. I was interviewed for Share the Land, which is a big performance for music industry arts that you'll definitely hear about later down the road. But
fantastic
teaser right there.
We'll watch for that.
Very good. And how's the album going? I want to ask you about the album because we plugged that, gave you a big debut last week. So
it's going really well. I'm pleasantly surprised about how well it's doing on Spotify and Apple Music and stuff like that. Yeah, it's been kind of fun just to see it sort of grow and turn into something bigger than it was.
Thank God he's making money. When the pandemic is over, he's going to need to take us out for beers. So yeah,
that's
so
right.
guys, get on there and buy that EP.
Here.
Yeah, somebody's journal is called. Get on there and buy some so that Rob and I can enjoy a beer.
I look forward to that day. We look forward to that day. Yeah. Hey guys, it's time to play our brand new game here on the Vickers Crossing. Are you ready? We like to call it.
It's not a lie if you believe it.
Okay.
There's
sorry,
George.
What is it again? It's not a lie.
It's not a lie, Kevin, if you believe it. And so what we do here is one of us tells a story or a little anecdote about ourselves, and it's up to the other guys in the room or whoever happens to be watching us today or listening to try to figure out if this person is lying or not. And it's Kevin's turn this week.
And it's not a lie if you believe it, right?
That's what we're going with.
So I could tell you anything really, and if I believe it, it's not a lie.
It's the truth.
This is the philosophy of George Costanza.
Right.
All right, guys, here it is. Okay. I'm waiting for my turn. I once had a cigarette with Martin Sheen.
Get out.
So that's what I'm going with. And just remember, it's not a lie if I believe it. It's not a cigarette.
You believe it, it's not a lie, but it's up to Ian and I to figure out if it's actually a lie. Wow, that's a good one. I mean, where would he have met Martin Sheen? It's Kevin. He could have met him anywhere.
The bathroom.
He chases people down in the airport.
Yeah.
So,
I do chase people down in the airport, but it wasn't in the airport. You can't smoke there.
Oh, okay.
It narrows it down. Okay.
Might have snuck outside. Yeah.
I'm making all this up, of course, but
are you? Yeah.
Not if we believe it.
Or does he believe it?
Not if you believe it.
Right.
Well, I'm gonna say there's some things that are a little far-fetched. I mean, I know Kevin's come across a lot of people in his life and is not afraid to go up and meet people he sees, and we love that about him. But Martin Sheen, I'm gonna say that's a lie, and even if you believe it, that's okay.
That's okay.
But I think it's a lie.
That's okay.
I also think it's a lie, but for different reasons. I think you did meet Martin Sheen, but I think you're so opposed to cigarettes that you didn't actually have a cigarette, but you did meet Martin Sheen.
Now that's very crafty too.
Yeah,
that's good too.
It's good too. So Ian is sort of right. I mean, I like to tell the story that I had a cigarette with, but as you said, I actually never had the cigarette. He had the cigarette.
Right.
Martin Sheen came to Windsor about, 15 years ago. Catherine M was director of campus ministry at Assumption University, and he received an honor there, a medal, which had been given to Dorothy Day and Jean Vanier and a whole bunch of people had received this honor over the years. And because of Dorothy Day in particular having received it, he agreed to come and get this. And it was the day before the Emmys. And so he came, and he was there for this whole day. He had to give some talks. He gave his speech at night. It was a dinner. We sat at the table with him. Catherine Ann was responsible for him. And at one point she had to go get some students ready for something. So she pawned him off on me and said, he needs a smoke. So I took him out back at the kitchen where all the kitchen staff smoked. And there we were back of Assumption Chapel, dragging on a cigarette with Martin Sheen.
That's fantastic.
It was fun.
Never in a million years would I have tried to figure out where you would have met Martin Sheen unless you were in an airport.
We spent the day with him. It was incredible.
Like, wow.
And it was during the Bush years. And I remember saying to him, I said, I come from, he said, you talk different than the rest of the people here. You got this funny accent. I said, well, I'm from Newfoundland. I said, you probably don't know where that is. It's an island out in the North Atlantic. Newfoundland. He said, of course I know where Newfoundland is. He said, we had a couple of installations there during the war in Stephenville and Argentia, during the Second World War. And I said, wow, you know more about Newfoundland than the current real president, because he was on West Wing at the time. I said, you know more than the current president. And he said, don't set the bar too high, Kevin. So he finished up that night, and the students invited him to go out to Bubby's for a celebration, and he said, and he came over and he spoke to all of them and said, I can't come with you because I got to get back. The Emmys are tomorrow morning. My plane is waiting. He literally flew out, and the next night there he was. He had his tuxedo in the plane, he said, and he went back, and there we were watching the Emmys the next night, and it was like, holy crap, we were just with him. So,
wow.
Anyway,
there you go. Got me, man. That was a good one. That's a great story.
Yeah.
All right, and it's not a lie.
If you
but
believe
he still
it.
believes it.
And I believe it. But I didn't have the cigarette. So Ian is sort of closer to right.
Ian actually got it. Yeah.
He did. Yeah, he got it right on. Yeah. So look, it's Black History Month, and this is an appropriate guest we have coming up. So we'll get to her in a minute. But we decided each week we would highlight, given it is Black History Month, another Canadian who's contributed a lot. And today, I want to highlight the person I'm going to choose is Lincoln Alexander. And for a lot of people, that's a name they see on the highway when they're driving. But Lincoln Alexander was Lieutenant Governor of Ontario from 85 to 91. He was a member of Parliament in Ottawa from 68 to 1980, a public servant, a lawyer. He's from the Hamilton area. He was the first Black Canadian member of Parliament when he was elected in 1968, if you can believe that. Cabinet minister, first Black cabinet minister, 1979, in our lifetime, Rob, not Ian's. Ian's too young for this. In recognition of his many important accomplishments, the 21st of January is Lincoln Alexander Day all across Canada since 2015. An incredible contributor to the landscape of Canadian culture, politics, and intellectual conversation. Lincoln Alexander has given a lot to this country, and we're thankful for people like him and many others. So today, for Black History Month, we hold up and give thanks for the life and witness of Lincoln Alexander.
Perfect. Thank you. And we will hold that up and acknowledge that for all of our shows in February. So that's great. Ginella is here. Shall we?
I think we should let her in. We should let her in.
All right. Ginella Massa is here from Canada tonight. She's on the Vickers Crossing, and we're going to bring her in right now. Here she is. And we welcome to the Vickers Crossing podcast today, Ginella Massa, who has joined us from Toronto in her home today. Ginella, welcome. We're so glad you're with us. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks so much for inviting me on. Really excited to chat with you guys.
We have CBC royalty here, Rob.
Yes, we
do. This is amazing. This is I think this is like, and they've done so much great promotion for you. I feel like we've gotten like just the biggest star in Canada right now on this show. So we're very excited.
You flatter me.
Listen, let me tell you, we're going to do a formal introduction here. Ginella is a Canadian Screen Award winner, best known as Canada's first hijab-wearing television news reporter, local anchor, and national host. She's currently the host of Canada Tonight with Ginella Massa, airing weeknights at 8 p.m. And if you haven't watched it yet, you're the only person in Canada, and you should be watching it because it's excellent. And I can
Thank you.
I watch it. Massa made history in 2015, believed to be the first television news reporter in North America to wear a hijab on air while she was hired as a video journalist for CTV News in Kitchener, Ontario. And she made international headlines again after anchoring an evening newscast at City News Toronto in 2016. With over a decade of experience in news and behind the scenes and on the air, Ginella has worked for both local and national outlets and television, radio. You'll also find her in newspapers because she's written bylines as well. She's amazing. She's raised in Toronto. She's graduated with honors from in communication studies from York and has a diploma in broadcast journalism from Seneca. And now the CBC is going to alter her bio on here to say that she was a guest on the Vickers Crossing podcast.
Well,
Exactly. That's going to go at the top.
Everybody wants to know that. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Let's start at sort of the beginning of this with this new show that you have and how exciting it is and what a great job you're doing. You've been in the host chair for now, what, 3 weeks? Not quite 4 weeks. It's 3 weeks.
We're into our 4th week.
And so let's talk about how's it going. How do you feel right at the moment? Are you comfortable in that chair as a national host? How's it going?
Yeah, it's really exciting. It's been a really crazy couple of weeks leading up to the show launch on January 11th. And let me tell you, it's really tough to put a new show together during a pandemic because I have not met most of my team in person. It's a lot of this virtual meetings. And that's tough because, you're trying to build relationships, you're trying to build rapport, understand how people work. There's no real kind of organic opportunity for small talk and getting to know each other and how was your weekend? And, those little things from the office that kind of allow you to create friendships, which is going to make, your work relationships successful. So we have to kind of force that a little bit. And, but I've been really lucky because, the team that was put together, a fantastic group of people with lots of ideas and energy and creativity. And that has really been what's given me the confidence, going into the show, feeling like I have this team who's got my back, right? I know it's Canada Tonight with Ginella Massa, but it really would not be possible with all of the people that are helping us put the show together. So I felt really lucky that we've, and really proud of what we've done in a pandemic and the show that we've put on the air. And the reaction has been, really positive. Of course, all the headlines are, first hijab-wearing, anchor, but what I really love is when people say, hey, I really love your show. I really love the segments that you're doing. People who say, I don't usually watch the news. I tuned in to support you, but I stayed because it was interesting. Right. So that is the stuff that is, really kind of makes me feel good about what I'm doing, is that like the journalism, the content, that people are responding to it. And it's really exciting.
Yeah. Well, on that point about people saying to you, they're really interested in what they see. And what they're hearing when they tune into that show. There's been an incredible emphasis, is what I've noticed watching these 3 weeks, on diversity. I mean, I think that you yourself bring such great diversity. And I imagine that just hearing you say that there's so many people behind the scenes who have played into this as well. And I hadn't thought of the pandemic end of it. So, good on all of you for being able to find a way. It's so hard doing everything through all of this, right? But building a brand new show. But you've had such great diversity, as you speak of, people saying, wow, this is good stuff. I've been watching and have been really impressed. You've had some great interviews about interesting topics, whether it's decriminalizing illicit drugs in British Columbia, or COVID tests, or the COVID cost on mental health, particularly in our Inuit community, and an interview you did with Inuit youth. It just is incredible stuff. Even just the labeling of Proud Boys as a terrorist group and what that means for us as a country. Do you have a favorite already? I mean, of those 3 weeks that you've had some incredible interviews. And what I like is, I mean, on a lot of the other shows, there's all these emphasis on large names and this and that and the other thing. But what I really love about your show is, you're talking to real Canadians about things that really matter. And so I'm just wondering if there's a favorite of yours that stands out right at the early parts of this.
That's a tough one, because we really have done so many great segments and topics. And as you say, that was one of our mandates, to say we want to reflect Canada in all of its diversity. We don't want to just bring people of color on to talk about issues of race. We want to have them commenting on lots of different things, because we are contributors to our society in that way. And that's something that we don't often see. So, doing that and feeling like we can do stories that aren't always making the headlines or aren't always, top of the news cycle, and talking to the people at the heart of the story, everyday Canadians who are directly impacted by these issues. Those are kind of our core mandates for the show. Do I have a favorite? I'll just, because it's an easy one. Last night we did a discussion, a debate, if you will. I'm not usually a huge fan of debates, but I thought it was a really interesting discussion
it was good.
on the legislation that's being debated in the Senate on assisted dying, medically assisted dying. And it's essentially extending access to people with disabilities. And so it was a really fascinating discussion around the idea of, people who live in poverty, people who are at the intersection of a lot of different social issues, and how that may influence their decision to access medically assisted dying, because the life that they're living, may not be perfect, not because of their disability, but because their access to certain supports may be making their life difficult. So kind of having, it was a little bit of a heated debate. If you watched last night, I just posted a short snippet on Twitter, and the whole segment's posted on YouTube, so you can look it up. That was a interesting conversation. Another one that stuck with me was the firefighter. The firefighter from Calgary, who was talking about the decades of racism that he'd faced in the fire hall. And it was heartbreaking and shocking. He talked about the idea that, as firefighters, we're trained for, these situations that are life-threatening, right? And he says, for us, we have to really be trained, because we don't know who has our back. We feel very alone as Black firefighters, people of color, and we have to, one of the most threatening places is the fire hall, not just the fires that they're fighting. So it's insane, because you think about firefighters as these superheroes, as these superhuman people that we look up to, and to know that it's a place that is perpetuating that level of racism that has been ignored for so many years, because it had been raised, and they'd done 2 external workplace reviews, and nothing ever came of them. They were never publicized. So those kinds of stories really stick with me when people share, their stories of struggle and on issues that are often talked about.
Well, they were incredible interviews. That was incredible, gut wrenching to me. The thing was, that's a life and death racism thing. It's life and death.
Yeah.
If you got to be worried about who's going to come save you,
the stakes are that high for them.
Amazing,
right?
Yeah.
And those are the stories we need to hear. And I'm so glad to hear your mandate around representation and hearing Canadians and seeing Canadians and hearing those stories. So I know there's going to be a lot more to come. A lot of the talk, Ginella, has been about being kind of historic, that, first in a national news program, person to wear a hijab, and that's been a lot of the talk. In a way, I thought maybe a sad statement, in the sense that, why is it taking this long? Why do we, all of a sudden now in 2021 we're doing this? But you've spoken elsewhere about how underrepresented many minorities are in newsrooms over the past. And we were chatting before we started recording today that I worked in some radio stations, and when I think back on it, I don't remember any minorities working in newsrooms that I worked in. I certainly didn't work in a lot, 5 or 6 in radio stations, but they weren't there. I was wondering maybe if you could share with our listeners some of your experiences of getting into journalism, even some of the challenges maybe you had to overcome.
Yeah, I was shocked when actually I walked into my first internship in the largest local newsroom in the country, in one of the most diverse cities in the world, in Toronto, because it didn't look like the Toronto that I had grown up in. It was really the first time that I felt like an other, like I felt quite foreign, because in a building of 3,000 people, the only other woman in hijab was the lady who worked in the cafeteria. Wow. So I could count the people of color on my hand. And so that was kind of shocking to me. And we do ourselves a disservice in media, because we are a public good. We're here to serve our society, to serve our community, to inform them. And when the newsroom does not reflect the society that we are serving, that is a disservice. Because the people who choose the stories that we tell, what stories are important, who tells them, what voices get heard, what questions are asked, what issues get covered. Those people need to have a different perspective of the world from each other. If they all have the same ideas about the world, the same perspective, the same opinions and understanding of the world, it's going to present a very narrow view of what's important. So, I think it's important for our newsrooms to be representative of our community so that we can challenge each other. I mentioned that on our show, we have a team, and our day starts with a story pitch meeting where everyone pitches a story. And even just, our team some of us are in different parts of the country. Yeah. So we have some who are in Vancouver. We actually have one producer who's in Yellowknife. And that has, I think, really helped us tackle stories from different parts of the country that we may otherwise not even know about. Having one of our producers in Yellowknife, she pitches all these great stories that we're like, we have, on this side of the country, we have no idea that they're going on. She pitches really great guests. Yeah. And so even just having that diversity in geography on our team influences the kind of stories that we tell and who we bring on to tell them. So I think that that's so important, not just in front of the camera, but behind the scenes as well. And in upper management as well. So, that was a really important part of me taking on this role. Was I'm not just coming to be the host and the face of this thing, but also be part of the development and have a lot of editorial say on the types of stories that we're telling and who we're bringing on to talk about.
It's interesting. We had Donovan Bennett on here earlier. Was that late last year, I think, from Sportsnet, and he was reflecting on the same sort of experience in that, particularly as it relates to those sort of upper management and behind the scenes things. It's sort of like, well, are we surprised? I mean, those of us who are the beneficiaries of white privilege, like, should we be shocked that, we're telling white stories, so to speak? The white supremacy of it all is laid out bare, whether we know it or not. It's in there. And so this unveiling, this happened through COVID, has been quite something. And I think that what you shared there is so important, because we need to know who's telling the stories. We need to diversify that part of it.
Yeah, I think we all, and it's nature. We talk about what we know. We talk about what our families are talking about, our friends are talking about. And so that may be in a little bubble, right? The things that are important to me are going to be different than the things that are important to you. And that's okay. But that's why we should both be at the table to talk about, what are the people around us interested in? What are the people around us worried about? Some of those things may be the same. Some of those things may be different. Right. But let's share those ideas and challenge each other.
Amen.
Right. You were mentioning how, in a sense, this has been a doorway for people to check in and see you, and then by extension, hear the stories that you're telling. So, but that same idea has not gone without some negativity that's come your way through all this as well. And your arrival on the national public broadcaster didn't go unnoticed, especially by those that are trying to sow division, right? And it's there. In Quebec, where Bill 21 has targeted Muslim women in particular with its religious symbols ban, a columnist for Le Journal de Montreal took issue with the CBC for hiring you, calling you its first veiled news anchor. And she wrote, "Would you accept a journalist walking around with a Conservative Party or Green Party button?" And then went on to ask, "How do you expect us to believe in Massa's real objectivity?" That's got to be hard to hear and difficult to hear, but were you surprised, and how did you respond to that?
Not surprised, because it's a question that I've faced all through my career for the last 10 years. Yeah. And I'll point out, it was not one, but two columns in Quebec.
Yeah. Two? I missed the one. I apologize.
So that was actually the second that was written. The first one was retweeted by the leader of the Bloc Québécois. So that also gave it a lot of attention.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So it's interesting, because what's interesting, first of all, about both those columns is that they were opinion columns. Neither of them mention my show at all in terms of its content. Right. So neither of those columnists took the time to actually watch the show and try to answer that question themselves. Yeah. Am I equipped to be, in this position, to be, objective and impartial as a journalist is meant to be? Is it possible for me to, put aside my own personal opinions, et cetera? It's so funny, because this question has been asked to me so many times, and it's interesting who gets asked this question. Yeah. Because the reality is, every single journalist, every single person that does the job that I do, has opinions, has ideas, has a religion maybe that they believe in or that they don't. And all of these things influence and color how they see the world. Not just that, but their education, their race, their gender, all of those things influence how they see the world, how they might approach a story, what questions they're going to ask. We as journalists, we make choices every day, and those choices are based on those things, our opinions. It's our job, though, to check those biases, to recognize them, park them at the door, and look at an issue from all sides. That is our job as journalists. So for me, in some ways, I feel like actually I'm raised to a higher level of scrutiny, because while someone else may have an opinion or belief or whatever it is, they can hide it.
That's right.
And it may come out in their writing or in other ways. For me, it's out here. I can't hide it. I don't have to say. You probably have a pretty good idea of what my opinion about Bill 21 is.
Right.
I don't have
Exactly.
but that doesn't preclude me from being able to facilitate that discussion. It's not my job as a journalist to give my opinion. It's my job to bring other people on to talk about it. And maybe as someone who's close to the issue, I may know what questions to ask that haven't been asked. I may understand the issue from a certain perspective. I may be able to build trust with a guest because they know that I can empathize with them. And to me, I don't see that as something that's negative. And I give this example. Right now, during COVID-19, every single journalist who's writing about COVID-19 has an opinion and is directly impacted by the story. Okay. So maybe you have kids who are in school and you have lots of opinions about the way that online schooling or schooling is being done. Maybe you have a spouse who has a business and you have lots of opinions about the lockdown or the curfews and how it's impacting small business. Maybe you have thoughts about a vaccine and you don't want to get one, but you're reporting on the rollout of vaccine.
Yeah.
We all are very close to the story that we are reporting on because we are all very intimately impacted by it. But that doesn't preclude us from being able to report on these stories. And in fact, one would say that it actually makes us better journalists because we know exactly what we're talking about because we were directly impacted by it. Exactly. So I think this idea that we need to be some, impartial, unbiased robot, essentially, that has no thoughts, no opinions, no ideas about the world, I think that that's a completely flawed approach to journalism. But at the same time, it's interesting that I'm the only one who gets asked if I can be impartial.
Right. That's the thing, because if I slid into the anchor desk on Saturday night with a little cross around my neck, that's my grandma gave me, nobody bat an eye, right?
And does that mean you can't talk about assisted dying? Does that mean you can't talk about a debate about abortion? Does that mean it's not, you're not there to give your opinion about it, you're there to facilitate a conversation, right? And to speak to people who are stakeholders in this issue.
Yeah, and the interesting part is he won't get asked, right? Because
that's what I mean. Yeah,
because me and Rob, we're as white as paste here, and that's the thing about white privilege that people don't realize. Like, I mean, it's the thing that you've highlighted that's so critically important there is that you're the one being asked this. You are no different than everybody else in that you'll have a position, you'll have, you might have a faith, like you say, all those things, but you're being asked. Why is that? That's the part that we as Canadians need to address. And it's a lot of what Black, Indigenous, and persons of color are facing in every aspect of life. For many of listening to this right now, hearing this from you is no doubt infuriating, and at the same time probably empowering, in that they see you where you are and they realize that you've gone through exactly what they're going through, which is they're being asked unfair questions, having to overcome more than anybody else, which is not right. Now you said it's a dream come true to be a part of Canada's national public broadcaster and to have a national platform, to an interview to Toronto.com. You went on to say, I see news as a public good. You mentioned this earlier. And that's what's great about being with the public broadcaster. I'm not with the public broadcaster because I can't say broadcaster, and so it's a public good, and it's what about being with the public broadcaster is that it's less about dollars and cents as it is with a private news network, and I'm very aware of the fact that we are publicly funded, so I see it as a responsibility. We believe that the public broadcaster is critically important too. And I grew up in Newfoundland, and, I eventually moved to Windsor. And when I went to Windsor, people said, you don't really watch the CBC, do you? Because they're so inundated with American news down there and everything. Like, a lot of people just they know more about the Upper Peninsula of Michigan than they do about Newfoundland. But in Newfoundland, if we didn't have the CBC, we wouldn't know what's happening in the rest of the country. And earlier, when you were talking about, a producer up in Yellowknife, like these things, we're learning about the North on your show in ways we've never learned before.
I'm learning about the North in ways I've never learned before.
Right, we're all in this. So in a day and age when people get news through tweets, or 280 characters and so on, we need journalists who can mine down past that. And you're doing this work. Talk to us about that responsibility you spoke about. It seems so critically important.
Yeah, and I think especially now we're in a time where there's so much information coming at you and you don't know what to focus on, and it can also feel very daunting and very depressing. That's one of the things, actually, someone said to me, you know what I like about your show is I don't feel anxious when I watch your show. I feel really anxious when I watch the news, but I don't feel anxious when I watch your show.
That's interesting.
And that really, I felt really good when I heard that, because one of the things that we talked about when we were kind of developing the show, what's the tone, what's the style, what are the words we want to think about? And one of them was optimism, that we want our show to feel optimistic in the sense that we want to help you understand or break down, some of the big stories of the day. What does it really mean to you? What do you need to focus on? What can you take away from this? Because we recognize that there is so much going on. The news is constantly changing and new things are constantly happening. And so, if you tune into our hour, we're going to be able to give you a little bit of information, but we're also going to we're going to have a conversation about it. We're going to try and break it down a little bit. And we want to meet people where they are, right? Mm-hmm. And really kind of we want it to be conversational in that sense. We want it to be accessible. Right. So for us, that is one of the big kind of points of the tone and the style of the show, being conversational, being accessible, and being solution driven, kind of in that sense of being optimistic.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. What's so wonderful is that the platform that you have is making a difference, and it's making a difference in people's lives. I think I know young Muslim girls in Canada are now turning their TVs on or going on YouTube and seeing you and seeing the work that you're doing, and this is opening up doors for more diversity in journalism, certainly. I wanted to ask you about something which I thought this is a great story, that this past October, I'm sure you've heard this, someone shared on Twitter that their daughter dressed up for Halloween as Ginella Massa. So what was that? What was your reaction to that? How'd that make you feel?
That was really surreal. To see myself in that way, but just so heartening. And when I was growing up watching TV and thinking about whether this was a career I wanted to pursue, it's hard to imagine yourself in that position when you haven't seen it before. Mm-hmm. They say you can't, if you can be it, if you can see it, you can be it. Right. And I think that is really true for these young girls who now can say, yeah, I want to be a reporter. I want to be a journalist. Like Ginella, she did it. For me, it was a lot harder to kind of, imagine myself in that position because I wasn't sure if it was going to be possible. Because I just hadn't seen it before. I didn't see people who looked like me, telling the news anyways. I did see them on TV in a lot of negative ways, in ways that didn't relate to my experience as a young Canadian, right? And so being able to see yourself in that way, I think is really important because it tells us, what spaces we belong in, what things we can aspire to. So seeing that, it's, it makes the tough days easy when you see messages like that.
Yeah, you fall back on that. And have young people reached out to you and shared some of that with you?
Absolutely. Lots of people, old and young, people who say, I love watching you with my kids. Being able to say that is something that they want to aspire to. And especially, in a lot of immigrant communities, actually, journalism isn't something that is really kind of encouraged. It's a lot of, doctor, engineer, lawyer.
That's true.
Right. And so being able to even to see this as a career opportunity. And I think it is such an important field for us to get into, to be in charge of our own story, to be in control of the narratives, because a lot of time the narratives are about Muslims
told for you.
Is being told for us. So I think that's a big part of wanting to get into this field is being able to see myself represented and to being able to tell the stories of my community.
That's incredible, really. And the other thing I noted, just before, I have one more question before we go, being it's Black History Month, but before that, the other thing that just occurred to me is you just recently celebrated a birthday, right?
I did.
Yeah, so happy birthday.
Thank you.
But part of the reason that you highlighted that on social media is because it shares the day with 4 years ago, the shooting in Saint-Foy, Quebec. which I know here locally in our community, we gathered at the mosque on a Friday morning. We rallied the community here in London to come together, stand in solidarity with our Muslim sisters and brothers. But the government has just announced a day of recognition. So I thought, a word or two about that.
Yeah. It's interesting because we talked about it on the show as well. We had on one of the victims from the shooting, speaking about that night. And I remember very clearly because it was my birthday,
Yes.
The 29th, and I had come home from celebrating with friends. And I was still in, my party dress, and I was eating leftover cake, and I turned on the TV and I saw the news.
Mhm.
And I just remember feeling this pit in my stomach
Mhm.
and watching that and thinking that can't be in Canada, that can't be.
Mhm.
And just feeling really stunned, and especially because of where it happened, right? A place of worship meant to be a place of solace, a place of peace. All these people were coming to have a moment of reflection with their brothers and sisters, and they were, targeted in that moment. And it's really difficult to think about, going to a place where you are meant to feel the safest and have it be terrorized in that way.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people in the community have felt like it was a moment where it happened, and then, it hasn't really been, discussed as widely as some would like, especially considering that there are a lot of white supremacist and hate groups that are very, very active in Canada. This isn't a one-off situation. This isn't a standalone situation. And so what have we done in the time since then to combat these issues? I had asked one of the guests if they thought this situation was preventable. And they talked about the fact that this mosque had been targeted before.
Right.
It had received, hate messages, hate mail. Someone left a pig's head.
Pig's head, yeah.
Yeah. So, this didn't just happen out of nowhere.
No.
And so, what have we learned about the failures ahead of this shooting since then, knowing that, these groups are still very active in Canada. So, naming it is step one, calling it Islamophobia, calling it, a hate crime. That's the first step. So then the question is, how do we go from just being symbolic to actually being action driven? Right. And so we'll see what that means from the government in terms of, now that they've named this day, what will happen after that, other than just.
Yeah, I think I think the Islamophobia part of it is so critically important, because that you face the crap that you did in those newspapers, for instance, and the leader of the bloc between you and the new minister of transport.
Right.
These are just blatantly Islamophobic attitudes. And until we can actually have an honest conversation about that. So as you say, hopefully we move beyond the symbolism of it, but I'm glad that we've named the day and that we acknowledge it.
And, I'll also say this is a big part of why I think it's so important for me to have this role that I have, right? To show people that, Muslims are contributing members of our society. We are journalists, we are doctors, we are, politicians, we are teachers. We have the same hopes and dreams and fears and, goals as every Canadian.
That's right.
And so when we continue to only see that image of Muslims as these foreign others who, are at odds with our Canadian society, they hate our way of life, et cetera, that's not true for me as a Canadian.
That's not the narrative. Yeah.
My Canadian identity isn't at odds with my Muslim identity. And so to be on air every night where I'm not talking about religion, I'm not talking about my faith, I'm just doing my job. I just happen to be wearing a scarf while I'm doing it. I think that alone in and of itself educates people about what Muslims are about. And I think that it's very easy to hate or have this intense feeling for something that you fear because you just don't know it. Right. So for some people, I may be the only Muslim they know or interact with. Right. And that may change their perspective or influence their idea about who Muslims are.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's watching those conversations, and it's modeling those conversations that you're having, as you say, with Canadians from a diverse background and across a very wide land. And when you model those conversations as you're doing on your show, that invites other people to be able to start the process of having those conversations with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so
Absolutely.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's, I mean, we said off the top of the show here that it's Black History Month, began yesterday. Well, by the time you're listening to this, 2 days ago. You bring great diversity. People in Canada now are celebrating the many achievements and contributions of Black Canadians and their communities who throughout history have done so much to make Canada what it is today, culturally diverse, compassionate, and prosperous nation that it is. You are Afro-Latina, born in Panama to Spanish-speaking parents. I mean, you are a picture of diversity, but you immigrated to Canada with your mom and your sister, I think, when you were quite young.
Yeah, I was 1.
1 year old. There you go.
Okay.
You grew up in the suburbs of Toronto with little means, so you certainly know what it is to be in those communities and
Yeah.
and all that. Do you have? I mean, it's Black History Month. Your reflections on that, and who were your Black heroes? Who were the people of your own culture that you look to? Because, like Rob said, a lot of those young girls right now, for instance, are looking to you, right? And they're saying, "Look,
Yeah.
Ginella." So, but and as you said, there was a dearth of that on TV. But who did you take inspiration from in terms of your own
I'll
identity?
tell you something funny. My birthday twin is Oprah.
Oh, really?
Oh, really? Wow.
Well, you get a car.
And
you get a
car.
car,
You
Ginella.
So I did watch her growing up a lot. And you talked about my mom. My mom actually is a big, someone who I look up to for inspiration. You mentioned, and this is so interesting because a lot is made about me being Muslim, but I have a lot of identities that
That's
I bring
right, you
to
do,
myself.
yeah.
And that, when we talk about perspectives and our experiences and how that influence our work, all of those parts of my identity influence my work.
That's
so
right.
yes, so being born in Panama, I speak some Spanish. My mom being a single mom, growing up, not having a lot of money, and all of those. Me and my sister being the first in our families to go to university. All of those things kind of, influence our view of the world. But my mom was a big inspiration because she was somebody who didn't limit herself, and she didn't allow people's ideas or perceptions of what she could achieve limit her from going after things, right? She came to Canada with $100 in her pocket, very little English, and 2 little girls. People called her crazy. People said, "What are you doing?" Right?
Yeah.
And she didn't let that stop her. And so, you could call her crazy, you could call her brave. Who knows which one it is. So, and that was something that she really instilled in me in pursuing this career. She was the one who kind of recognized my gift of the gab. I wouldn't shut up when I was in school. Number one comment I would get from my teachers: Ginella's a good student, but she talks too much.
It's paid off.
Yeah, well, exactly. So she said, well, you got to go into a career that lends to your personality. Maybe you want to put all that talking to good use. I was in the school plays and the speech competitions, and she said, well, maybe you want to go into like broadcasting, and I said, oh, well, maybe I'll go into radio because, then it doesn't matter what I look like. Recognizing at like 9 that someone like me, maybe wouldn't be accepted in that world. Yeah. And she said, no, well, don't change your dreams or diminish your dreams because no one else has done it before, that doesn't mean you can't do it. So she always kind of encouraged me to don't wait to be asked, don't ask for permission, pull up a seat to the table and create opportunities for yourself. Right. And so she really is a big inspiration for me. And she's so proud and excited.
Oh, she must be.
The show.
Yeah. She should be.
She should be. Yeah.
And I think just to highlight something you just said there, I mean, we talk about, like you said, there's a lot made of your hijab and your this Muslim host. But I mean, I'd have to really stretch my mind to think of another Black national TV host and a national program. So, I mean, here we are, we're Black History
Ticking
Month.
a lot of boxes here.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you do. Yeah.
But
it's so critically important. And for us, what we talk about on here is really around faith in the public square. And I think the fact, and it's not about proselytization or trying to convince anybody that you need to be anything. It's about living your faith in such a way that you can show the wider reality of a culture and a nation, that people of goodwill are contributing to our culture, to our society, to who we are. And your very presence on our national broadcaster really lends a lot of that. So I'm so excited for the show. We both love what you're doing. We thank you for taking, I know you're busy. And is there a scoop that we should know for tonight?
Yeah, what's on
I
tonight?
don't even know yet.
What's on?
We have our story meeting in an hour, so I'll find out then.
We'll find out.
Sorry, I can't tell you any secrets.
Okay.
Because I don't have them.
Well, Ginella, we really do appreciate you giving us the gift of your time and the gift of your work, which really is making a difference in the lives of those who are watching and across the country. We're so happy that you could spend some time with us. And we always say, people that are on TV, we feel like they're part of the family now. We really feel like you're now part of the Vickers Crossing family. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Don't forget to get them tell Francis to update that bio, okay? So it says you've been on
Right.
Vickers Crossing.
Yeah.
Exactly. Guests on the Vickers Crossing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good luck, Ginella, with everything. We'll be watching, and we wish you and all your family and everyone safety and good health and all the best as you move forward.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Kevin. Take care.
Well, that was great. I was so happy to meet her. Been looking forward to this interview for a while, guys, and it's wonderful to have Ginella with us and give so graciously of her time. We know how busy she is, so that was great conversation.
Guess who's jealous?
Me.
Ian was a bit jealous. Yeah.
Ian didn't get to
So-
meet Ginella.
Right. So for everybody just to know, Ian did have to run out and take care of some school business, so he wasn't able to be part of the interview. But
That's right. So he's just
but
got
we
to be
spoke
jealous.
well of you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Aw.
we spoke well of you.
Thanks.
Yeah. I gave her your number.
Oh, sweet.
No, I didn't.
Dang it.
We've got some great guests coming up throughout February and March.
Oh, amazing.
Keep watching your Twitter feeds and your Facebook, and check us out on thevickerscrossing.com to find out more. But listen to these names like Brian McLaren
Yay.
coming up, Diana Butler-Bass.
Wow.
Wow. Who else, Kevin?
We got Father James Martin.
Martin.
Wow. Big, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Huge.
I just landed Malcolm Gate from England. If you don't know who this guy is, look him up. He looks like he walked right out of Middle Earth. Okay. He's at Cambridge as a chaplain. He is an expert in everything Tolkien. But his poetry and his writing, and he's just released a new book of his reflection on the Psalms. Just an amazing guy, singer songwriter as well, Ian. And he puts these little videos up, and he's in this little office surrounded by stacks of paper and books, and he's got a long pipe, and he looks, I'm sure the door is round. I am sure the door is round. I'm certain of it. And like one of the little tidbits from this week when I was listening to him, the map is not the landscape.
Ooh,
The
I like
map
that.
is not the landscape.
I like that.
Isn't that?
Okay.
Just think about that for a bit, folks. Anyway, he's
All right.
coming up and he's awesome. The map is not the landscape.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to that and a lot of other guests. And we want to thank everybody for tuning in and joining us on another edition of the Vickers Crossing today. And again, thanks to our sponsors, A. Miller George Funeral Home, where each life is celebrated, and their sister company, Cremation London, Middlesex, both family owned and operated, to Hyde Park Care Pharmacy, Hyde Park Care Pharmacy, locally owned and locally operated, and to Molly Maid, make your home a healthy haven. Call Molly Maid London today. Gentlemen, it's been a slice.
Hello, is this Molly
Take
Maid?
care. Be well.
We'll try.
And we will see you again in another week or so. Okay.
All right, man.
And my name is Rob Henderson from Holy Trinity St. Stephen's, and he is
Kevin George, St. Aidan's,
And I'm Ian.
from the bedroom.
in
Yeah.
the bedroom. And remember, Kevin, to always look both ways.
Before you cross the street.
Thank you for listening. Our hosts are Kevin George and Rob Henderson. Our producer and composer is myself, Ian, with original artwork done by Elizabeth Dodman. If you have any questions or want to know where to find us, tweet us at Vickers Crossing or find us on Facebook at The Vickers Crossing. If you have any other questions about anything heard on this podcast, leave us a comment or look in the description to find out more. Thanks!